We've heard the words like machine learning and like neural network quite a lot recently. How would either of you describe that? Would you know?
Well, I know I attempted to study human language development in university, and they do, like, I'm not a computer science person, but they do describe language learning and learning in general for humans in like a similar sort of way. Just as an attempt to turn, this mushy brain into like a diagram or a flow chart or something like that. Yeah, in my very, very limited understanding, and then like please build on top of that. I feel like it's, a flow chart of decisions, input, and then if that, then this, go down, the decision tree until you get to the end. And then I think what artificial intelligence is doing is then putting whatever it gets at the end back in at the top a million times within a second to, layer that learning.
No, iterative.
Yeah. So I learned something at the end of this flow chart. I'm going to pop that back in the top and start again. And then when I've done that 100 times, then I'll give you my answer. But that's like within a split second.
It's kind of like a weird version of survival of the fittest. Like
yeah,
the ones that don't
survival
work,
of the fittest idea. Yeah.
And that's to do with like class inheritance, and so like when you've got like, if you make a class or an object, then you can get it to inherit certain traits. So
like DNA.
I guess that's one part of it.
Like Sims.
I suppose like so yeah, machine learning, and this is like an evolutionary algorithm we've applied to it. But then which is something that Sharon spent all his time doing at school. But I think now it's more about the large language model. So essentially they take a massive data set with all of these words and stuff like that, and then they assign like numerical values to each of these words that a computer understands. That's the other thing that's a bit strange, is that the computer processes it very differently to how we process it. So the way that it arrives at its conclusions is very, very different from a human. But the basic concept is that they have a neural net. So they're trying to model the brain as much as they can.
Yeah, this is why I thought it was. It's the way it thinks is modelled on like a human brain rather than like...
They've got like nodes.
It was much more like linear before.
It's modelled on our models of the human brain.
Yeah.
So like the human brain isn't a model, like, but it can be turned into a diagram that we say is a good enough match for the average human brain. But I remember sitting in, psychology lectures and thinking like, this isn't the same as a person. Like this diagram that I'm looking at in front of me, it's missing out the fact that they have this favorite color, or the fact that their best friend is this person, and it's missing out all the subtleties of like an individual. But that's how we model the brain, is kind of on average.
Yeah, but I think in this case it's more like how a human would think, or how a human would process some sort of data. But there are different brains, and there are brains that process the exact same thing in different ways. Neurodiversity is the like topic of that, but also like even just what things do you find funny compared to a different person? They might not find that. You could tell the exact same joke and two people react to it in completely different ways. So it's just a processing thing. I guess it'd be funny to ask an AI if they find a particular joke funny, but then they'll just say, I don't know, I don't have feelings. Like on average I could calculate that this might be funny. I think that's a separation at the moment, isn't it? Between us and AI.
But an AI doesn't have any feelings.
Well, it will tell you that it doesn't, at least.
For now.
It will I do think that there is probably a limit in that we are carbon-based life forms. and you got silicon-based life forms. I do think there's probably something fundamentally different between us and a computer can't replicate what it means to experience.
Yeah,
but then we couldn't tell if it could. Like, that's there's the problem of mind, isn't it? So like, I can't tell that project has feelings. Like, I can't tell. Like, all I can see is like your behaviour and you acting like you might have feelings, and me trying to
interpret,
empathise and interpret those feelings. But an AI, it's I just assume, I can make the assumption that you probably do have feelings. But with a computer, I'd probably go, no, it probably doesn't. It's probably just calculating.
Well, you can't see the feelings. You can see the reactions to the feelings.
Yeah. You can see the
response,
expressions, and I think as humans, we're actually our brains are quite dumb in a sense of we'll accept a cartoon line drawing with a moving mouth and eyes that go off in a different direction as not a living thing, but something that we can watch for an hour on a film and get really upset when they die or
some pixels have been killed.
It doesn't even have to be that realistic, and obviously films and animation and that has gotten more and more realistic, but we still have deep down in our heart a love for the simplistic cartoons of the good old days that were good enough for us to have a cry over or fall in love with. And I don't think we necessarily care too much that, oh yeah, that's a living carbon-based thing in front of me and that's the only reason I care. But
as long as it exhibits human-like behaviour, I think we're happy to accept it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of worrying too, because it's the one thing that I think will probably be the difference is that we'll have the feeling of it, and then we're just going to have emotionless AIs that we think have feelings because we're so dumb into believing it.
Yeah, a lot of our feelings are just projections. That's what I think we're going to realise even more, is that if we can project our deep emotions onto something else and get a response from that, that's good enough for us to
in robotics, they study so much about, they take a lot from animation. They spend a lot of time looking at animation, how the animators create project emotion. So and they replicate it on the robot.
Yeah.
So I don't think we won't particularly care.
I think I could say, again, at least from what I've learned, if I can relate it to AI, it's some things to do with probability as well.
Yeah.
Let's say every possible thing that could pop into your head right now is just swimming around with equal possibility of popping into your head. The thing that I say to you sends it causes you to recalculate that. So talking about where you live would come up as more likely to be the next thing you'll think of, as opposed to where you went on holiday 10 years ago goes down in the probability depending on what we're discussing. And those neural networks are constantly recalculating what to bring to the forefront just in case and what to keep in the back. And that's why you have whilst you're having a conversation, things are coming up in the back of your mind and you might get distracted by them or just change the subject. And I think if AIs or neural networks within computers are working in the same way, they've got this house of information and things that they're keeping locked away, and the probabilities of needing that are going up and going down.
Yeah, so it basically learns how you use your phone or your computer, whatever.
Yeah.
And throws up what it thinks you're going to want at a specific time based on previous things that you've done.
Even if I was to chat to an AI, conversation, just the fact that I've sent them the first word in English, they're going to put all the other languages down like on the probability of needing to respond in.
I've never thought of that. I've never actually
different language.
Never used it with a different language.
It will react. It will
I've done it in Vietnamese. Like, I've tried it.
Yeah, it replies fully in.
But yeah, it understands Vietnamese.
I'm sure you could write like one word in English, the next word in different language, and then swap, and it would just respond to you like in that, as if you just created a new language.
It'd be good to try that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could probably ask it to create a new language.
Yeah.
If you said, okay, well, take some of the rules of take this. Actually, won't it? You take like the grammar of Japanese or something like that, or a European language, and then you said, okay, well, I also want it to have a sort of a Latin root or something like that. So you could probably make like a quasi weird, not a quasi quatang, but a quasi weird language like that is like coupled together out of other languages.
I think that's what the best thing that AI can do right now in terms of its like capability and to be creative is just like remix everything that's already been put out there.
Well,
so mash things up.
That's all it's doing is remixing stuff. Like if you like for instance, how does it learn what a square is? Well, it's trained on images of squares, like loads of different squares in different places, and it learns to recognize that to be a square. Those are the certain properties of the square because the input is, well, someone saying, an AI researcher or whatever is saying, that's a square. They even get them to do those, those capture things on. That's actually training some AI to recognize that certain thing to be something. So it gets trained and trained and trained and trained, and then it sort of understands squareness, as it were, as a concept.
That's why it has to get harder and harder all the time, because we're constantly training it with these challenges that are to prove that you're a human. But then once you've taught the computer, you can't use that again because you already told it the answer.
Have you heard of the Turing test? Yeah. So it's this Alan Turing basically came up with the idea that, he's very famous in computer science, came up with this idea that if a computer can respond in a way that's naturalistic and seems human-like, then it's sentient. I don't really agree with it. I think it's a really flawed test for that problem of mind issue, which is that we cannot know how the computer is thinking. And it's probably thinking very differently from us. It's processing very differently from us.
It's all interpretation.
So it's a flawed test, but and probably ChatGPT and other chat AIs have passed that test.
Yeah, it's like what Google was doing in their like latest big announcement, and they got the computer to call up the hair salon and book an appointment, and like you could hear that the conversation was quite robotic on the computer's end.
But then some people are robotic.
But that if that person on the other end of the phone wasn't really paying attention or didn't really care, just trying to do their job.
Sounded quite natural.
Yeah. Nobody asked her at the end, did you think that was a human or Google? Nobody asked her, so it's irrelevant.
Well, there's a saying to err is human. It's actually our errors that indicate that, that we are human.
Conscience. Feeling guilty about things. Don't know if you can get a computer to feel guilty.
No, you can say, okay, this is something that a guilty person, well, you should feel guilty for this. You can tell the AI that, and you can say don't give me actions that lead to this feeling of guilt which humans have and stuff like that. So you can kind of trick it into having a moral conscience.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have a conscience.
You don't have to teach a human to feel feelings like that. They just do. As soon as they switch on as a child and they trip over their friend or something like that, they automatically feel something.
Unless they're psychopaths.
Yeah.
Which is basically
which we have.
That's basically what an AI is.
That's what an AI is.
It's a psychopath, but I mean, psychopaths can be useful because they can process information really well and churn out an output. Thanks for watching this clip of the Education Lounge podcast. If you want to watch some other clips, click here. If you want to watch the full episode, click down here. Please like and subscribe, as it really helps our channel.
The Education Lounge podcast.